Hello and welcome everybody to another Benzinga Pro video. I've got our Senior Vice President BigBeat and the head of the news desk, Brent. I am the Customer Success Manager, Ryan Faluna, and today we're going to talk about something that I get asked about all the time. I often hear from people, hey, how do I research insider buys or insider sales? And today I'm going to have BigBeat and Brent explain that to you. So BigBeat, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate having us on here. Very simple. The first thing I would do is create a new workspace, and we have the workspace up and running here. I will open up a news feed. So right in the top left-hand corner, you'll see news feed. That's right. And there's our news feed coming in. But for us, we're going to change the sources. So we're looking for the sources of two things here. We're going to uncheck Benzinga signals and uncheck Benzinga wire. And we're going to check press releases and SEC filings. Now, the two things that you see here are already in color, but if you click on the word press releases, you'll see that there is a color slider coming in here. Now, for me, I like turning the press releases brown, kind of reminds me of paper, and then for SEC, turning them green for money. So that's how I pretty much have my SEC filings coming in to me. Now,
I like that, Big B.
You like that? That's great. So once it's done, click on the done button, and now there they are. Now we know one thing, that we know that at Edgar with the SEC, that insider buying and insider selling is what we call a Form 4. So in order to do that, I will search it by keyword. And if you put the keyword box up there in the top left-hand corner, the word Form 4, F-O-R-M, the number 4, no spaces, and just hit enter. And if you'll see that, bam, all of the insider buying and insider selling are in green for you. So you'll see them all coming up. There are several things that we can do and what we see for them, but I'm going to turn over to Brent right now, and Brent's going to explain to you what he sees in the Form 4s.
So I think something, somebody looking at this, they might go, whoa, this is a lot to sift through, and it is. But there's a couple things that we can do to filter this a little bit. We can filter. You can sort of like filter your eyes by the number of shares. So I'm looking through and kind of, squinting my eyes a little bit, making them fuzzy, and I'm noticing, I see one in here that's for buys 25 million shares. That definitely sticks out. A little bit further down, Ryan, there's a ticker CBB, that's company Cincinnati Bell. You'll see that one of their directors sold about 55,000 shares, and that sort of sticks out right away. The other cool idea that you were suggesting to me, BigBeat, is you can filter for key personnel. So, for example, CEO, you'll notice, excuse me, that there's a couple CEOs selling here. There's a couple CFOs selling here. And so what I think you're going to do there, Ryan, is you can go up to your search field and we can add in another qualifier here. So right now we're only filtering by Form 4. We're also going to add in the keyword CEO, and Ryan's going to click that keyword. And what this filter is going to do, and look at that, it right away reduces it down to, there was about 25 or 30 headlines there, and adding that keyword CEO in there filters it down to just like 4 or 5. And on the News Desk team, we're most of the time really focused on those buys or sells by CEOs, presidents, CFOs, the chairman of the board, maybe the COO. Under COO level, we're sort of like a little less turned on by it. So again, a couple good ways that you can filter this. So why don't we, go through one of these filings actually, and I can give you a little bit of insight into, what you're actually looking at when you look at one of these. The headlines on Benzinga Pro here are very helpful in kind of right away looking to see, okay, I know this director, president, CEO bought 5,000 shares. But really what you want to do is if you're going to use these in your strategy, you really want to be able to look in the SEC filing and like know what the heck you're looking at. So why don't we just try the top one there, Ryan? Click on the rare Form 4 filing, and it's going to pop open here. And an advantage of these, you're going to look at these, and they're going to be a little cryptic, but the advantage is that the format is always the exact same on these filings. And so when you look at these, there's going to be mostly there's going to be 3 blocks. There's going to be this first block that we're looking at right here, and what that's going to define is who did the transaction. It's going to include their name. It's going to include their position at the company. So their name is over in the top left field. You can see this is Emil Kakis. You can see the company is Ultragenics there in the middle. And then that box number 5, Ryan, over on the right side where it says relationship, you can see what this is doing is it's marking some check marks. Those little X's there are little check marks. So Emil is a director and he is an officer, and it tells you right there he's the president and CEO. Notice that the 2 check marks that are not listed there is 10% owner and other, and whatever other might be. And so sometimes in these filings you'll see that the 10% owner is check marked or X, and you'll know that they have a pretty large stake. Let's go down, scroll down a little bit here to the second box, and this is our non-derivative securities section. That's called Table 1. Below that is Table 2, and that is your derivative securities section. And a lot of the times the derivative securities one is going to be the one that you'll probably not want to focus on as much. Go back up to Table 1 for the non-derivative, Ryan. And what we're looking at here, a couple important things that you want to note here. So right now, Ryan, your mouse is close to an important column that you want to look at. It's the column that says A or D. Do you see that column? Yeah, right there. And so in the column heading where the number 4 is, it's actually defining what the terms are. And it's A is for acquired and D is for disposed. And we can see that in this section he acquired 5,000 shares in the amount section. It'll tell you the price. It'll also tell you the day the transaction happened, and it'll tell you the amount of securities that the person has following the transaction. So if they added shares, if they acquired shares, that number is going to be higher. If they disposed of shares, that number is going to be lower. And now the really important column that we want to focus on here is the column that is in number 3 under code. And that right there is a P for purchase. And so this is where it gets a little bit more cryptic. So I could tell you right now, the thing that you want to look for in here, in this column specifically, is either a P for purchase or an S for sold. There's like, I don't know, maybe 15 other codes that could be filled in here. And those are important, but they're not going to be as important if you see a P or an S. And what a P or an S indicates is that this person that is disclosing it purchased or sold shares in the, and here's the important part, open market. So this Emil here for Ultragenics, of his own volition, went out into the open market and purchased 5,000 shares at $43.63. Now let me give you a quick example of what else you might see here. So another code that you might see here is, let's use M. You might see an M here sometimes. And what that means is that let's say the executive had a compensation package that was tied to options. When there's a compensation package that's tied to options, a lot of times what happens is the board will work with that executive to define when they can or cannot sell or execute or exercise those shares in their option contract. And so what happens sometimes is you'll see an insider selling or buying stock because it was their time to basically go get that compensation that they had already agreed with the board. And so what we're looking at with this filing is, again, this person went out on in the open market of their own concern and decided, I want to buy 5,000 shares. If it was the case where it was that compensation tied options, it's not necessarily their own volition. It's more of an opportunistic time where they want to get that money that they were sort of guaranteed by the board. And what you can do a lot of times is, in that example that I used where the code was M, if that was the case, Ryan, you would have been able to scroll down to the Table 2 derivative section, and you would have been able to see those options exercised. And it would have effectively been the same amount of shares sold, probably, as exercised. So, like, if the exec had 50,000 shares exercised, or 50 contracts for 50,000 shares exercised, they can make a decision to sell or buy any of those. But most of the time, they're probably going to sell or buy those 50,000 shares. And again, it's not quite as meaningful as if you see or a P or an S in that column 3. So that was like a pretty, pretty advanced but quick explanation. BigBeat, do you think there's any parts that I sort of missed?
Yeah, and a quick question, Brent.
Yeah.
How can we tell if this guy here has other shares? Has he bought other shares in the past?
Ooh, that's a good question. So if you scroll up in that column 5, it's showing you amount of securities beneficially owned following the report. And it's showing you there's about 400,000 shares attached to this, and it looks like about 2.6 elsewhere. I think what you would want to do, BigBeat, is you probably would want to just go, like if you wanted to get a track record, which is going to be more robust, obviously, what you would have to do is you'd have to go find the Form 4s by Kakis.
Right.
We can do that using Benzinga Pro, right? We can filter in that way. So that's a kind of a quick way where you can probably really quickly go back and kind of like look at how their track record of buying or selling has. And yeah, I think what you want to see, BigBeat, is you want to see, if a stock is at a low, maybe you would want to see some buying. If a stock's at a high, you kind of like really want to see some buying, right? No matter, what the stock price is, the president and CEO is going, okay, the stock's at a 52-week high. I'm still buying. I still think the stock is cheap. Yep. And obviously, if you're a shareholder of Ultragenics, you want to see that, sustained buying. You want to see that, the president and CEO has been buying for the last 3 years and, doesn't look like there's going to be any end in the buying moving forward.
Yep. And that brings me to how I trade the Form 4s. If you want to clean that off for us, Ryan, you'll see that if you clean off the word CEO, earlier in the week, I found a couple of interesting plays, but today I found a really interesting play with Live Ventures. LIVE is the ticker. So whenever I find a ticker that I really like, I will then type that in. That's Live Ventures. And all of a sudden with that, I see that the CEO has been going busy buying up shares over the last few weeks. If you'll notice there, August 22nd, he bought 3,000 shares. He bought 4,500 shares. And then eventually he bought 17,500. He started buying when the stock price was right around $6.08. Now, if we went back a little bit further, you'll see that he had been buying them even more than that at a higher price, but I think he was probably trying to leverage his positions and buy even more, so he's pretty bullish on his company. So I did find that, and if you look at today's stock price on Live, it is pushing up. It was up about 10% earlier today. Another one that I found earlier in the week, and I thought was very interesting, was Microsoft. It was MSFT. And I'll show you what was going on. On Monday and Tuesday, we did see some selling in the stock price. And I was asked, why do I think that the stock price of Microsoft has been going down? And I can pretty much tell you that there has been some big sells in here. Is it so big that it hurt the stock price? Probably not, but some people are watching the insider buying and the insider selling. Now, in this situation, you'll see that on last Thursday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that there was some heavy selling there. 11,000 shares, 12,000 shares, 4,000 shares, 99,000 shares were sold by the CEO, Satya Nadella. So very interesting. And of course, stock price, Microsoft has been down. So that's how I am using it.
That's great. I think you had a nice little hint in there too, BigBeat. You said, well, is the selling enough to move the stock price down? You said, well, probably not. But I think the key is you said we're watching it, or people are watching it. Yes. And I think that's a really good, like, kind of subtle tip is if you do want to use these insider transactions pieces of news, they're really good, but don't let them be, like the only thing that's going to make you buy or sell the stock. If you had a, fundamental thesis in Microsoft and you had a price target in Microsoft and the stock's kind of near your price target and you see a lot of this insider selling come in, maybe that's something that sort of like pushes you over the fence and helps you make a decision. It's another factor to think about.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, does that answer your questions you had for us today?
Yeah, no, that does. That's really a great tutorial. A couple of things that I want to add here real quick.
Sure.
Number one, regarding the search bar at the top, the way that this search bar functions is it uses an AND operator between your two keywords. And the reason that that's important is because when we type in Form 4 here first to get all of the insider Form 4s, if we then type in a ticker like you guys did with Live or Microsoft, what you're looking for are both tickers, not one or the other, but both tickers. So you want to see Form 4s that also include Microsoft or whatever ticker it is that you put in there. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that if you have something like this set up, there's one more thing that Pro can do for you. You turn on desktop notifications.
Ooh.
Now, anytime that you go to another tab or something else, like if you go to your platform or your broker, or even if you go to another tab up here that you might already have set up in Pro, like for example, the calendar, now if a new form is released at some point during the course of the day, you're going to get a desktop notification saying that. And again, if you have just a Form 4, that might be a little noisy. You might get several desktop notifications. But if you have this boiled down to a stock as well, I mean, look, there was one on Friday, September 6th, and there hasn't been one since. So this is another little tip for kind of alerting you that something is going on here. And as Brent said, you know, maybe you want to use this as one of your data points, not to solely rely on this, but to use it as one of the data points in your trading style. So yeah, I think that does answer the question. That's a great tutorial. Anything else that I forgot?
No, I think that's good.
I don't think so, no.
Right.
One thing I just did want to add, if you guys and gals need to find out what the code in the filing is, like I mentioned, you know, P and S, I knew what that meant. I mentioned M. If you guys want to find out what like those actual codes are, I usually just do a quick Google search, SEC Edgar Form 4 codes. And there's a resource on Edgar that will show you what all of those codes mean, and you can kind of use it from there.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. BigBeat, Brent, thank you for sitting in on this video.
Absolutely.
If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. I would be happy to assist you in any way that I can. Our news desk and our master trader and senior vice president are also very accessible throughout the course of the day. So if there's ever something that you have a question about, let us know. We'll do our best to help. Until next time, thanks very much. Happy trading.